Hi, my name is Jessica Reeves. I'm doing English 101 online summer 2014. The essay I'm reading about is transnational and domestic terrorism threats. In the 10 days after the horrific September 2001 attacks, the United States, with the support of world governments, vowed a global war on terrorism. The attacks served as a wake-up call to the world that transnational terrorism poses a grave risk. Since then, counterterrorism effects have massively increased on a global scale. However, still, in the last decade, the U.S., coupled with many other countries, had experienced the rise of domestic terrorism, usually characterized by mass shooting in the public places, including schools, and thus resulting in many fatalities, including deaths. Therefore, terrorism is a broad term and can be seen as the threat to use violence by individuals or subnational groups in order to obtain political or social objective through intimidation of a large audience beyond that of intimidate victims. As a matter of fact, two ingredients, namely presence of violence of political, social agenda, characterize terrorism. According to Enders and Todd, terrorist operations include hostage missions such as skyjacking, hostage-taking, assassination, bombing, suicide attacks, and armed attacks, nuclear-related weapon attacks, sabotage threats, and chemical or biological attacks. According to Brown, despite global effects on fighting terrorism, the terrorism threat in this last decade showed no signs of diminishing. Instead of global terrorism worsened. Barron's evidence points out that in the 6 years following September 11 attacks, 30 from October 11, terrorists rapidly killed about 11,800 people worldwide. Yet in 3 years before the attack, starting January 1998, only 4,800 were reported, because these figures include resulting from active conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Global fatality rate after the September 11 attacks would be much higher. In addition, bombing in Turkey, London, Bali, and Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan carnage to date signified of a worsening trend in the last decade's global terrorism. Another report by Mahallison and McNeil and between the years 1969 and 2009, 38,445 terrorist incidents occurred globally. Because of these 2,981, only 7.8% were directed to the United States, while the rest were directed towards other world nations. Therefore, the issue of terrorism is a global, as all nations are targets. In the report, however, about 5,600 people lost their lives, with more than 16,300 people suffering injuries due to global terrorism directed to the U.S. Furthermore, and reported that while terrorism attacks was directed to the U.S. are deadlier than other countries, and a higher number resulted from September 11 attacks. Also, with 7.8% of worldwide terrorism directed towards the U.S., 43% of all military attacks are leveled against U.S. institutions. In addition, the research report 28.4% and 24.2% of all worldwide terrorist attacks against domestic officials and businesses are aimed at the U.S. institutions. Therefore, the U.S. are the report suggests and primary target for terrorists. In the Middle East, stability and nuclear tension has raised an arm and worries over Pakistan. Probably a nuclear-armed U.S. ally has raised concerns, mostly not on only Washington, worried about what lies ahead was, according to Smith, was characterized by a crisis after another in a form of violent protest against the government, including suicide bombs, martial law, institution assassin from former Prime Minister, coupled by riots. In order to effectively fight global terrorism, in order a coupled and stability needs to restore in not only nuclear-armed Muslim countries, not only entire globe. Matter of fact, Smith points out that Pakistan is considered the front line against the war of global terrorism. According to Senator Joe, the chairman of Senate Foreign Relations Committee, this country is the single most dangerous nation in the world. A second report by the CIA in the war of terrorism states poor governments, ethical, cultural, and religious tensions, and a weak economics and the primary breeding grounds for terrorism. Such states, according to the CIA reports, are plagued by domestic groups and primarily objective challenging the government, coupled by transnational networks seeking safe havens. In the report, trends of global terrorists are promising, as some of the states actively supporting terrorist groups may cease their support by year 2005 due to changes. Conclusion: the terrorism is counterproductive and of immediate neighbors. However, weak states may also drift towards crippling known terror groups, such as creating new supporters. In addition, the CIA and the war terrorism reports that information technology applications are becoming diverse due to the growth of global information technology. Since this could ensure the application in terrorism area, the CIA reports that between now and 2015, terrorists may increasingly become more sophisticated and designed to achieve mass on global scale. Therefore, despite most nations hoping the decrease in global terrorism, new sophisticated terror attacks may form domains in terror. Therefore, as the CIA reports, greater fatalities in terrorist activities as expected by 2015. First, according to Huffington Post in 2012, December 14, at Sandy Hook Elementary School, Laza killed his mother and drove to school. Forcing in his way, Laza opened fire, a rifle, and killed 20 children aged 6 and 7, finally shot himself dead. Therefore, domestic terrorism, just as global terrorism, presents a great risk to loss of lives. As seen in domestic terrorism does not on who dies or get luck to survive. Everyone is at a great risk. Therefore, the Congress should understand the burden of responsibility in protecting the U.S. from terrorism and terror activities also through legislation. But domestic and global terrorism pose a great risk on human lives. With the advances in technology such as IT, terrorism activities are becoming more sophisticated than ever. Trends show that despite a state sensation to expect to support terrorism. Well, this is talking about what the essay I wrote today. Thank you.